What makes a car from the 1940s still look beautiful more than 80 years later? Because this wasn't an easy decade. War changed the world. Civilian production came to a halt, and when American cars returned to the streets, they no longer represented just luxury or transportation. They represented hope. Today we're going to discover the most beautiful American cars of the 1940s. Models that weren't just beautiful, but captured an era of transition, style, and pure nostalgia. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin with one of the most elegant Packards ever built. 1940 to 1942, Packard 180 Darrin Convertible Victoria. This car didn't look manufactured, it looked commissioned. As if someone had walked into Packard, made it clear that money was no object, and ordered an automobile with the elegance of a custom-tailored suit. It represents one of the most refined expressions of American beauty before the war, completely transformed the industry. It wasn't a car built to fill the streets, compete in volume, or look modern at any cost. It was an automobile for the elite, and you could tell from the very first glance. The foundation was already one of Packard's most prestigious, but the body designed by Howard "Dutch" Darrin gave it an entirely different personality. Lower, cleaner, and more flowing. The lines seemed to glide seamlessly from the hood to the rear, with an elegance that felt almost European, while still retaining that unmistakable American sense of power and presence. It didn't have to exaggerate. It didn't need excessive ornamentation. Its beauty came from its proportions. It was the kind of car you imagine parked in front of an elegant hotel, with someone important stepping out slowly while everyone nearby tries to look without appearing too impressed. Under the hood was the refined 356 cubic inch inline 8, producing around 160 horsepower. But in a car like this, performance wasn't the main point. What mattered was smoothness, silence, and that feeling of moving forward with quiet authority. Its exclusivity makes it even more special. These Darrin-bodied versions were produced in extremely limited numbers, almost like semi-custom automobiles for buyers who wanted something different from a conventional Packard. Today, that makes it one of the brand's most desirable collector cars. But beyond its rarity, this Packard belongs on this list because it perfectly captures the beauty of early 1940s America. A blend of classic luxury, Art Deco styling, and aristocratic presence. 1949, Cadillac Series 62 Coupe de Ville. This car didn't look like it came from the past. It looked like it was announcing the future. It was one of those automobiles that marked a clear turning point in American automotive history. It still retained some of the formal elegance of the 1940s, yet at the same time it was already introducing the design language that would define the decade to come. Lower, cleaner, more modern. And above all, it had a presence that made it clear Cadillac was preparing the road toward a new era of luxury. The Coupe de Ville's greatest innovation was its concept. It wasn't a convertible, yet it wanted to look every bit as elegant as one. Its pillarless hardtop body gave it a far sleeker and more sophisticated profile than a traditional coupe. With the windows rolled down, the car had the open, exclusive feeling of a premium convertible, while offering the comfort and security of a fixed roof. In 1949, that was something truly special. Cadillac wasn't simply selling a beautiful automobile, it was selling a new idea of prestige. Under the hood, the Series 62 introduced one of the most important engines in Cadillac's history, the new 331 cubic inch V8, producing around 160 horsepower. It was more modern, lighter, and more efficient than its predecessors, helping transform the brand's image. This Cadillac wasn't just elegant. It also delivered a level of smoothness and responsiveness that made it feel remarkably advanced for its time. Production of the Coupe de Ville was limited to just over 2,000 examples in 1949. From the very beginning, that made it a special version, reserved for buyers who wanted something more refined than an ordinary Cadillac. And today, that historical significance carries tremendous weight. Because this car isn't on this list solely for its beauty. It's here because it helped define a formula that would become fundamental to American luxury. The elegant, low-slung, sophisticated hardtop coupe with the appearance of a convertible. 1948, Tucker 48. This car didn't look like it was designed for its own era. It looked like it was designed for a future that never arrived. The Tucker 48 is one of the most fascinating American cars of the 1940s because its beauty didn't come from traditional luxury. It didn't have the aristocratic elegance of a Packard or the formal presence of a Cadillac. Its appeal came from something entirely different. It looked advanced, low, wide, aerodynamic, and completely unlike almost anything else driving on American roads after the war. While many manufacturers were still recycling pre-war designs, Preston Tucker wanted to build an entirely new automobile from the ground up, filled with ideas that sounded almost impossible in 1948. And you could see it in every line. The body featured a flowing shape with a graceful taper toward the rear, giving it an incredibly modern presence for its time. But the most famous detail was at the front, the center headlight that turned with the steering wheel, giving the car a unique, almost futuristic face. It wasn't just beautiful, it was unsettling, as if someone had already seen the 1950s before the 1950s even existed. But the Tucker story wasn't one of commercial success. It was a story of ambition, pressure, controversy, and an abrupt ending. Only 51 examples were built, including the prototype. And that's exactly why every surviving Tucker 48 is now treated almost like a museum piece. Its current value reflects that legendary status. A Tucker 48 can easily sell for more than $2 million, while the finest examples can approach or exceed $3 million, depending on their history, condition, and documentation. Before we continue, let me know in the comments, do you think the Tucker 48 deserves a place among the most beautiful American cars of the 1940s? Or do you find it more unusual than beautiful? I'd love to hear your opinion. 1941, Lincoln Continental. This car didn't look like it was designed to follow a trend. It looked like it was designed to outlive them all. The Continental is one of those automobiles that explains why American beauty in the 1940s was so different. It didn't rely on giant tail fins, excessive chrome, or theatrical styling. Its elegance came from its proportions. It was born from a very personal vision by Edsel Ford, who wanted an automobile inspired by European design, lower, cleaner, and more sophisticated than conventional Lincolns. The result was one of the most refined silhouettes America produced before World War II. It didn't look like an ordinary luxury car. It looked like an American Grand Tourer before that concept had truly become popular in the United States. Its beauty wasn't aggressive, it was serene. It had an elegant, almost aristocratic presence, as if it had been created to cruise along a coastal highway, arrive at a mansion at sunset, and come to a stop without anyone needing to ask who was inside. Under the hood was a 292 cubic inch V12 producing around 120 horsepower. It wasn't an extraordinary figure, but the engine delivered an exceptionally smooth driving experience. Today, first-generation Lincoln Continentals are highly sought after by collectors, thanks to both their historical significance and timeless design. A well-preserved example is typically worth between $80,000 and $150,000, while convertibles and exceptional cars can exceed $200,000. 1948 Chrysler Town and Country Convertible. This car didn't look like it was built from steel alone. It looked like it was built from wood, luxury, and nostalgia. Its beauty was very different from that of the great coupes and sedans of the decade. It wasn't elegant because it sat low like a Lincoln, futuristic like a Tucker, or aristocratic like a Packard. It was elegant because it seemed to have texture. At a time when many American cars were trying to modernize after the war, Chrysler chose something almost handcrafted, a body featuring real wood framing, decorative wood panels, and a presence that felt closer to a classic yacht than to an ordinary automobile. And that's what made it unforgettable. It wasn't a car meant to blend into the background. With the top down, its wooden body sides, gleaming chrome, and broad, elegant body, it looked made for a life of seaside hotels, private clubs, peaceful highways, and warm summer afternoons. Its beauty wasn't aggressive, it was warm, almost family-oriented, yet at the same time, incredibly exclusive. Because even though its appearance seemed relaxed, this was far from a simple automobile. In 1948, the Town & Country Convertible was one of Chrysler's most expensive and exclusive models. It carried a price tag of nearly $3,400, a substantial amount for the era, especially for a car that combined luxury, style, and a level of craftsmanship far beyond that of a conventional convertible. Just over 3,300 convertibles were built in 1948, a relatively limited figure considering Chrysler's manufacturing capacity during that period. Today, the finest restored examples typically range between $100,000 and $180,000, while exceptional concours. Quality cars with correct details can exceed those figures. 1949 Buick Roadmaster Riviera. This car didn't simply look beautiful. It looked modern at exactly the moment America needed to feel modern again. The Roadmaster Riviera arrived at the end of a decade shaped by war, halted industry, and the return of optimism. And that spirit was reflected in its design. It no longer carried the heavy formality of pre-war automobiles, yet it hadn't reached the dramatic excesses of the 1950s either. It arrived at the perfect moment of transition, and that's exactly why it was so elegant. The Riviera wasn't trying to be as aristocratic as a Packard or as futuristic as a Tucker. Its beauty was more optimistic, more urban, more connected to post-war America, with brightly lit boulevards, elegant restaurants, and families beginning to look confidently toward the future once again. Under the hood was Buick's famous 320 cubic inch Fireball inline 8, producing around 150 horsepower. It wasn't a sports car engine, but it was exceptionally smooth and packed with torque, perfectly suited to moving this large Buick with the quiet comfort that defined America's finest luxury automobiles. But the Roadmaster Riviera isn't on this list because of its engine alone. It's here because it helped create an image. The image of the elegant, spacious, low-slung, and sophisticated American coupe. Production remained relatively limited, with just over 4,000 examples built in 1949, making it an increasingly desirable automobile for collectors today. Today, a well-preserved 1949 Buick Roadmaster Riviera is typically worth between $60,000 and $100,000, while beautifully restored, highly original examples can command even higher prices. Before we continue, let me know in the comments, do you think this Buick is more elegant than the 1949 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, or do you believe Cadillac still had the stronger presence? Leave your answer in the comments. 1949 Mercury 8. This car wasn't born as a symbol of rebellion, but that's exactly what it became. The Mercury 8 had a very different kind of beauty from the great luxury cars of the decade. It wasn't as aristocratic as a Packard or as refined as a Cadillac, but it had something many of them didn't: attitude. Its design was low, rounded, and flowing, with a silhouette that seemed to move even when standing still. The body had an exceptionally smooth shape, almost as if the wind itself had sculpted every line. That compact, wide, and clean profile quickly connected with a new generation of enthusiasts. Because the Mercury 8 wasn't just beautiful as it left the factory, it became beautiful because of what people imagined it could become. Over time, it became one of the favorite foundations for the American custom car movement. Chopped roofs, shaved bodywork, lowered suspensions, custom grills, and deep paint finishes transformed the Mercury into the legendary lead sled, one of the most influential styling movements in classic American automotive culture. Under the hood was a 255 cubic inch flathead V8 producing around 110 horsepower. It wasn't an extreme engine, but it had the sound, the torque, and the personality that made it perfect for the custom scene of the era. And that's where its true importance lies. The Mercury 8 doesn't represent showroom beauty alone. It represents street beauty. The kind of car that didn't need to be parked in front of an elegant hotel to attract attention. It could be sitting outside a roadside diner beneath glowing neon lights, its engine still warm and its paint reflecting the night, and it would still look like a legend. Today, its value depends heavily on its condition and whether the car remains original or has been tastefully customized. A good 1949 Mercury 8 is typically worth between $40,000 and $80,000, while expertly restored examples or historically significant customs can easily exceed $100,000. 1941 Cadillac Series 62. This Cadillac didn't seem built to look toward the future. It seemed built to bring an era to a dignified close. Its design was beautifully balanced: a long hood, flowing fenders, an imposing grille, and bodywork that appeared to flow as one continuous piece. It wasn't as theatrical as the Cadillacs that would arrive in the 1950s, yet it conveyed something just as powerful: prestige. It was the kind of automobile that didn't need tail fins or excess to look important. It was enough to watch it arrive slowly, with its gleaming chrome front end, low stance, and unmistakable image of a car reserved for people of influence. By 1941, Cadillac had perfected a formula it already knew exceptionally well. American luxury defined by smoothness, silence, and presence. And the Series 62 was one of its finest expressions. Under the hood was the 346 cubic inch L-head Buick, producing around 150 horsepower, and the feeling was unmistakable. You were driving a Cadillac. Production was relatively high compared to some of the ultra-rare automobiles on this list, but that doesn't diminish its historical importance. On the contrary, the Series 62 helped establish Cadillac's reputation as America's ultimate symbol of luxury before World War II. Today, a well-preserved 1941 Cadillac Series 62 is typically worth between $50,000 and $90,000 depending on its body style, originality, and restoration quality. Convertible models and exceptional examples can easily exceed $120,000. 1947 Studebaker Champion Starlight Coupe. This car didn't seem to follow Detroit's rules. It looked like it was trying to write new ones. It wasn't the most expensive car on this list, nor the most luxurious, nor the most powerful. But it had something very few American cars of the late 1940s could claim: visual personality. While many manufacturers were still building heavy, pre-war inspired designs, Studebaker introduced a silhouette that was far more daring. The Starlight looked lighter, lower, and more modern, with a wraparound rear section that made it instantly recognizable. Its most famous feature was the enormous amount of glass surrounding the rear cabin. That wide, curved panoramic rear window gave the car an almost futuristic appearance for 1947. It wasn't just a styling detail. It completely changed the way the car looked on the road. From certain angles, it was almost impossible to tell whether it was coming or going. And in an era dominated by more traditional designs, that was a bold statement. The Champion wasn't trying to compete directly with Cadillac, Packard, or Lincoln. Its beauty came from somewhere else: originality. It was a more affordable automobile, yes, but its unique presence made it feel more special than many cars that cost far more. Today, the Studebaker Champion Starlight Coupe is admired precisely because of that distinctive styling. A good example is typically worth between $25,000 and $50,000, while professionally restored, high-quality cars can command even higher prices. And after Studebaker's bold design, we arrive at the final car on this list: 1949 Packard Custom 8. This car didn't seem to be chasing the future. It seemed determined to preserve a form of greatness that was beginning to disappear. This Packard represents one of the last great moments of traditional American elegance before the 1950s completely transformed automotive design. While Cadillac, Buick, and other manufacturers were beginning to embrace lower body lines, modern hardtops, and the first hints of tail fins, Packard still defended a more classic vision of luxury, more formal, more dignified. And that made it deeply elegant. The Custom 8 wasn't designed to look youthful or futuristic. It was built for people who valued quality, comfort, and prestige above changing trends. Its body carried a commanding presence, with flowing lines, an imposing grille, and a sense of visual weight that made a Packard look important, even while standing still. Inside, the philosophy was exactly the same: spacious accommodations, refined materials, comfortable seating, and an atmosphere designed for quiet, effortless travel. The Custom 8 didn't want to feel sporty. It wanted every mile to feel calm, expensive, and meticulously crafted. Today, a well-preserved 1949 Packard Custom 8 is typically worth between $40,000 and $80,000, depending on its body style, originality, and restoration quality. Convertible models, rarer versions, and exceptional examples can easily exceed $100,000. And in the end, American cars of the 1940s are special because they belong to a decade of transition. They still carried the classic elegance of the pre-war years, yet they were already beginning to reveal the optimism, modernity, and style that would explode during the 1950s. Some were luxurious, others were futuristic, and some simply had a silhouette that was impossible to forget. Now, I'd like to hear your opinion. Of all these American cars from the 1940s, which one do you think is the most beautiful? The Packard Darrin? The Tucker 48? The Lincoln Continental? Or would you choose one of the great Cadillacs, Buicks, or the Mercury from this list? Let me know in the comments, because your choice always makes these lists even more interesting. And if you want to see how this beauty evolved into something far bolder, watch the video now on the most beautiful American cars of the 1950s, because that's when American automotive design stopped being simply elegant and started becoming a spectacle,